packets. Like, if you remember in the previous section, we discussed about how we can classify. We can create some class maps and we can create different categories of traffics. So that's what the classification. But as this traffic moves over the network, you don't want you just want them to have a special treatment, right? Because it's not possible for me to go to each and every router and do the classification. So let's say that if the traffic is coming from this device to this device, and I'm doing the classification part here, and as it moves in your network, maybe from router to router or switch to switch, I want this router to be identify this classification with some kind of code. So based on that, automatically it has to give a special treatment depending upon the that particular marking. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to classify and also I'll do the marking, some values. And depending upon these values, all the devices in your network will try to decide what type of treatment you want to give for that particular traffic. Because you always want your VoIP traffic, let's say my VoIP traffic should be treated high priority. So I'm going to give a marking value, something like EF. We'll see this. There is a DSCP value, marking value. Or I'm going to say the marking value of 5, which again tells that it's a high priority traffic. Or some other traffic like FTP traffic, it's not high priority traffic. So I'm giving the marking value of 1, which is something considered as low priority traffic when compared to 5. So we will be deciding some values, and based on these values, whenever a router or a switch receives those particular packets with a marking values, automatically it's going to decide what action it has to take. So for that, we need to do marking. So marking is something you have to do, nothing but giving some kind of coloring. Coloring means just for understanding, but actually we give some value. We assign some value to that. And that value will be the deciding factor of telling the remote devices what exactly you have to do with that particular packet, what kind of priority. You need to give the priority for this traffic. You need to drop this traffic. Depending upon the value, it is going to decide whether it is a high priority traffic or whether it is a low priority traffic based on those values. And this information will be added inside your frames. If you are using a layer 2 switching, then inside your frames, it will be added. And if the packet is traveling between router to router, it will be identified inside your IP packet. So in terms of marking, we can say there are two types of marking we do here. We do the marking at the layer 2 or at the layer 3. Now the layer 2 marking is something we do as the packet moves in your layer 2 network. Generally the .1q links, the trunk links, which carry some additional information. If you remember some basic switching concepts, you will have some ISL .1q frames. ISL is no more used. So inside this .1q frame, as it moves from switch to switch, there's a specific field which is reserved for marking. So there are some 3 bits which are reserved for marking, and this bit is going to carry your marking value. We'll see a little bit more details later on. And similar way, when the packets are traveling from router to router in the form of an IP packet, and inside your IP packet, again, there are some special field reserved called type of service, and there are 8 bits reserved for that. And these 8 bits will decide what will be the L3 marking, the layer 3 marking, and there are some options inside that called IP precedence and DSCP. So the marking can be done at the layer 2 as it moves in your layer 2 network, and there are some different values used here, and there are different fields reserved for that. And similar way, as the packet travels from router to router in the form of a layer 3 packet, there are some bits reserved, and these particular reserved bits or the inside the header, there are some special fields which are reserved, which is going to carry your marking options. Like I said, in case of layer 3, marking. We'll talk about layer 3 marking a little bit later. There are two options we need to learn. We'll be learning something called DSCP and IP precedence. So there are two options to do the marking. And when you're doing the layer 2 again, we have something called class of service, which is 3 bits, and it gives some numbers from 0 to 7. We'll talk about this. And again, when we talk about MPLS marking, and MPLS also we have 3 bits called experimental bits. If you know some MPLS, in that there will be a special field called experimental bits, which will be used to carry the marking value inside your MPLS core network. Apart from that, you can also use some kind of internal marking, the locally significant marking called QS groups, where you can group multiple classes into one group for marking.